Okay, so the first item
The agenda.
is the agenda. So I'd like to ask that I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda from May 8th, 2024. Excuse me, the meeting minutes. Do I have a motion on the floor?
I move to adopt the meeting minutes from May 8th, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any objection? The approval of the proposed agenda for this evening, September 4th, 2024. Do I have a motion to accept?
I move that we adopt the agenda, accept the agenda for 2024.
9-4.
No, I mean, not for 2024, too many fours.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any objection? So moved. Okay, we don't have public comment, so we're going to move to committee member
You want to
introduction.
just go over that first? So we're gonna have committee member introductions, board member comments, senior staff comments, goals and updates, equity climate survey, and then we'll adjourn. And then I've printed some agendas. I apologize for our screen showing, but that will be corrected for next time, but there are some printed agendas if you need them.
Okay, so at this time, since we have new members, welcome to everyone who's joining the committee, and this is your first racial equity meeting. I'm so excited to have you here, and at this time, I'd like for everyone to go around and introduce themselves. Tell me your name, your feeder pattern, and what was your compelling why? Why did you want to be part of this committee? So we'll start with Ms. Monique Russell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monique Russell. I am in the Brunswick School District, or feeder school pattern. And my compelling why is I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and they're going to public school, and I wanted to make sure that I was involved. Because if you aren't trying, you can't complain.
My name is Meredith Nichols. This is my 20th year with FCPS, and I am in the Tuscarora district. And my compelling why is my students.
I'm Felicita King, also known as Cedar King. I'm in the Walkerville feeder pattern, and my why is because I'm retired from the school system, but I want to stay connected with the school system. I thought that this was a great way of staying connected.
I'm Sherry Hydell. I live in the Frederick High feeder pattern, but I work at TJ, and my reason for being here is the same as Meredith. It's all about the kids.
My name's Elijah Steele. I'm in the Governor Thomas Johnson feeder area, Governor Thomas Johnson High School. Why? Well, that's come with the student member of the board role. But also, it's a great way to make students feel they're equal and that they are safe in their school.
Hi, I'm Dana Barlow. I'm in the Urbana feeder pattern, and my compelling why is usually in these type of committees there aren't any male representation, so we need someone to step up.
I'm Shantae Gordon Harvey, also the Urbana feeder district, and my compelling why I have 2 little ones in this school system, and I want to make an impact.
Hi, I'm Keith Harris. I'm the Chief of Equity and Organizational Development for Frederick County Public Schools. And my why, the superintendent gets to appoint several members to the Racial Equity Committee, but that's not my why. My why is simply because I'm passionate about this work and ensuring that each and every student and staff member are able to show up as their authentic selves and are able to thrive in whatever they're doing.
My name is Carrie Artis, and I am the Director of Equity for Frederick County Public Schools. And my why is because I just really want to be a part of bringing racial equity to FCPS.
Good evening, everyone. Scott Murphy, Director of Curriculum in FCPS. Also, my why is not because the superintendent appointed us, but similarly, a real commitment and passion for ensuring access and opportunity for all of our students. in every single one of our schools, in every single part of our county.
Good evening. My name is Ray Gallagher. I am the Board of Education liaison to the Racial Equity Committee. I also have 2 children who are in the Oakdale feeder pattern with FCPS, and my why is all of you and all of our students within FCPS. I think that we've done a lot of great work. This committee's done a lot of great work, and there's still a lot of work ahead, and I'm excited to have you all as a part of that work together with us.
I'm Dr. Reed. I'm a parent. I have a 13-year-old in TJ Middle School. My why is to be a mouthpiece for my child, and as well children of her age, and girls. And I'm sorry, I don't know why I sat here. I don't belong to them.
We all belong together. Exactly.
I'm actually in the school system, and I didn't know. I just sat here.
You're in the right
Well,
place.
thank you for sitting next to me.
I look like one of you.
It's all good.
I am
I want to do. Sorry.
I'm Jenny Christ. I also in the TJ feeder pattern. I have one already in the school system and another will be there next year. And then my why, I am a former educator, not in Frederick, but in Fairfax County. And then now that I'm on the other side of the table, trying to do my part to make sure that equity is happening across the board.
I am Dr. Yolanda Allen, and late.
Your why.
Okay, my feeder pattern, I have twin 9th graders at Linganore High School. My why is, right now I'm a supervisor for principals in Montgomery County and been an educator in education for 27 years. And my kids always say, one, they say I have a different voice when I'm talking to parents than when I'm talking to them, but they also talk about my engagement with their schools because I'm always giving to other students, and so I want to make sure, especially at high school, that I'm carving out time for them.
Good evening, Denise Hammond. I'm also Linganore feeder pattern. I have a son who just started Linganore High School. My why is him as well as all the other kids in Frederick County. I'm an educator in Montgomery County. So equity is one of my core values, so I'm really honored to be part of this committee.
I'm so happy to have you. My name is Dr. Camille Bell. I'm the one that sends you all the emails. Right? I work in the Walkersville feeder pattern. I work at Walkersville High School, and my why is intense. I joined this committee because I knew something had to give. I knew it was time for something to change, and I just didn't want to talk about it, but I really wanted to be part of the action. So I'm very happy to be here with all of you.
And my name is Sabrina Nail. I am the ombuds with Frederick County Public Schools, so I help to address any issues or concerns and ensuring that people have an equal voice and be heard and feel valued is part of my role and part of my personal value system. So I'm happy to be here and happy to be a part of this. And thank you all so much for being a part and for coming this evening.
I'd like to, at this time, move into board member comments. So, Ms. Gallagher.
Okay. So thank you to all of you for being here, and in particular, welcome to our new members who are joining us for this year, and welcome back to our members who are coming back for another year with us on the Racial Equity Committee. I'll give a couple updates on some things that are happening on the board from a policy perspective. Many of you, and hopefully I'm not saying anything that some of our staff members might be talking about, but I'm also the liaison or the chair of our policy committee, and I think that there's a lot of policies coming up in the next year that are under review from our committee and the full board that will likely be of interest to this committee. as well. And so I'll highlight two policies that have recently come before the policy committee and the full board. One is our dress code policy, which is policy 439. Those of you that were here last year likely remember a conversation that we had as part of this committee. Dr. Mearshaw and several of our senior staff engaged in that discussion to hear feedback about your perspectives on things to consider with the dress code policy. It has been significantly revised at this point, and I think Dr. Bell sent out an email to this committee to let you know that the first round of revisions have been completed. We discussed at the policy committee meeting, I think it was last week, it was recently enough, and it will be going to the full board within the next probably month or so for our first reading with the full board. So there were significant changes made to that policy that came out of this discussion with the Racial Equity Committee. Dr. Mearshaw and other staff also held a number of focus groups with students and staff, administrators, to get feedback on that as well, but I don't believe we're done. So if you haven't had a chance to review that policy, there's still plenty of time to review and offer feedback, either to the policy committee, to the full board, but please take a look at it because we were very intentional, even in our policy committee discussion last week, about that balance between First Amendment rights and clothing or apparel that might pose a disruption, safety concern within our school system. And so please take a look, offer any additional feedback you might have. It'll be probably a little bit before we actually finalize that. And then the full board also took a look at our student discipline policy revisions at our board meeting last week. So that's been updated and hopefully now more in alignment with our student code of conduct as well. So that has also not been finalized, but the full board has moved that along for a second reading, which is likely to mean that it will be approved at a future board meeting. So if you would like to offer any feedback on that, as we're thinking about student discipline, we'll also be decommissioning our suspension and expulsion policy, that sort of goes hand in hand with that policy. So I would encourage anybody who might have that area of interest to take a look and offer any feedback before we finalize that. So those were the two things that I really wanted to highlight tonight. Welcome back to school, everybody, parents, teachers, staff. Hopefully we have a great school year ahead.
Thank you.
Well, Ms. Gallagher basically hit everything, but I'm just gonna say I'm excited to join the committee and work with everyone. Yeah, she basically said everything, so I think it's fine.
That is absolutely fine. And senior staff comments?
Scott, you want to start?
Sure. Again, as Director of Curriculum and Instruction, I help to oversee and support all of our academic areas, as well as student programming such as early childhood education, multilingual education, career and technical education, and advanced academics. As Ms. Gallagher said, similarly, a lot of work in curriculum and instruction overlaps or ties directly to work that happens here in this committee, as well as other policies and regulations that we have as a school system. I did want to draw your attention to another board committee, which is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee that meets monthly, in which we present many topics of interest to that committee of the board. For example, in October, and I'll bring it to the next meeting of this group, we will be presenting about dual enrollment and advanced academics. Since looking at potential disparities in participation in advanced coursework, it's something that's very important to us as a system, priority in many of our policies and regulations. This committee, as well as committees like the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Each month, that committee presents to those board members, and I think many of the topics will also be of interest to this committee. Another example is last month we did present about early childhood education and pre-K, which is a quickly growing, expanding area in FCPS to really attempt to expand access to universal pre-K across our district. We're now up to 79 classrooms throughout FCPS, which is truly exponential growth just in recent years and will continue to do so. And when we look at the enrollment of those pre-K programs, they're really starting to reflect our demographics as a district. So just a couple examples of the work of curriculum instruction that I wanted to highlight for this committee, and we'll continue to do so throughout the year. The other, just one piece I did want to mention as we start this school year, this marks has been a journey to get towards what we call decentralization of all of our multilingual education programs. So historically, at the secondary level, middle and high schools, students in multilingual education typically needed to go to a central site, such as Frederick High School or Thomas Johnson High School. But knowing that we have students really in every feeder who benefit from multilingual education services, we now have programs in every single one of our 10 high schools, the Career and Technology Center, Heather Ridge, as well as all 13 middle schools. And so this marks the first year where really that is now across the board, district-wide, and so we're really thrilled to be able to announce that every single multilingual learner will be able to access programs in their local school. So those are a couple of updates that I wanted to share with this committee, and we'll continue to do so throughout the year.
All right, and again, welcome to all of our new members to the committee. Just a few things to share, because we'll be sharing a lot of updates as we go through our presentation tonight on the Equity Climate Survey. You'll hear some updates, but just we've gotten off to a really good start to our school year, and part of our start to the school year is training that we require all staff to go through in matters of race and equity, and so all of our staff participated in hate bias reporting and training as they returned to school. And actually our equity reps had the opportunity to come back during the summer to participate in some additional training. But there's required training that all of our staff goes throughout the year. And so the first one was on hate bias reporting, and then they have one coming up in a couple of weeks that will be on equity-driven impact statements and questions that really focuses on how do you drive and determine unpacking your actions, your practices, and your behaviors to make sure that all students are represented and showing up in all of the decisions that we're making. So that training is ongoing. Also wanted to highlight, we shared last year some of our work with No Place for Hate, and that work is continuing. I see a hand clapping in there. All right. So some of our schools were designated as No Place for Hate schools, and this year we have all 10 comprehensive high schools who are a part of that, as well as some of our middle schools and our other programs who have high school students in them. And so we're excited for that work that's occurred as well. And again, a lot more updates that will come with our presentation in a few minutes, but Dr. Artis, anything else? Okay.
So, just wanted to share some news in the community that the Black Health Equity Coalition of Frederick is asking for a survey from any members of the community and to complete that. So there is a link that we will share with you. It's blackequityfrederick.org. The survey is accessible to people. So this was information that was shared with us today.
I took that this weekend. It takes about 5 minutes to do. It's not long.
Thank you for sharing. So a short survey and just something that we wanted to need to be aware of.
We want to talk about our goals and updates for this year. The committee, we want to work collectively on the following things. We want to support continued training and guidance to the student leaders. We want to make sure that we're forward planning and engagement strategies for our community forum. That's going to be in April. And student rec members, we were looking to get some enrollment. We did not have any students. We are actually putting out another feeler to see, and I have had students reach out to me and said that they want to be part of the committee. So also, we're doing some real heavy work with SOCA this year. We have 3 visions. We as a group want to establish a subcommittee that is going to focus on SOP, standard operating procedures, have continued visibility in the community regarding SOCA. So we really need to sit down and figure out how to make sure that we're getting the information out and it's reaching the students and not just like reaching building administration, but actually touching the students. And doing some event planning and organizing of monthly meetings. When I spoke to the students from SOCA, we really talked about some real, just basic key goals for them as well. And that was connecting, building relationships across students of color across the county. We want to make sure that they have a way to connect with one another so that they can talk amongst each other. Creating avenues for them to do some advocacy work. They want to give the system some feedback. That's really how they started. So we want to make sure that they have opportunities to do that. And then just creating safe spaces for students to come together, to commiserate about their experiences. And if they need to use their voice, we want to make sure that they know how to do so. So those are some things that we are really looking into doing this year. And I know I'm probably more excited about this part than anybody in this room. I was at the beginning stages of this. So without further ado, the Equity Office is here to tell us what's going on with the Equity Climate Survey.
Okay, so while the presentation is being changed over, Ms. Gallagher alluded to it, and Dr. Bell as well. There are a lot of enhancements and changes to make sure that all of our students are represented, and all of the work that we do throughout our school system has been going on the past several years. And the Racial Equity Committee has been instrumental in helping to inform and drive some of the changes in the work that we do in FCPS. And that starts with some of our policy work, whether we're talking about educational equity, our policy 444, whether we talk about policy 443, with welcoming and affirming environments for all of our staff and students, or whether we're talking about our most recent policy 117, our anti-racism policy. And really that's the genesis of the Equity Climate Survey and why that was conducted. And so tonight, Dr. Artis and myself, we want to share the results of the Equity Climate Survey, and these results were presented to the board at the end of last school year on May the 15th. But nonetheless, we wanted to make sure we dedicated some time to go through the findings with the Racial Equity Committee, as well as unpack some of the results from that and talk about some of the work that's been done thus far and that's ongoing in responding to some of the results. So when we talk about Equity Climate Survey, another word that's typically used is an audit, equity audit. So when I say Equity Climate Survey, it's pretty much a fully comprehensive audit that was conducted over the period of a year. And so this evening, we definitely want to go through the presentation, starting off with the why. And so sort of unpacking policy 117 and regulation 117 and expectations that are highlighted through there. Share the results of the Equity Climate Survey, and as we share those results, we also want to share what the recommendations were from the survey, as well as some of the things that have been in place, keeping in mind that the survey was completed in May at the end of last school year. So wanted to share that. Dr. Bell mentioned SOCA. SOCA stands for Students of Color Alliance. And so just one for our new members, and those are just some of the members of our SOCA at one of their events previously. So wanted to give a shout out to them. So just for our new members and just to go back for our existing members, because as you know, the Board of Ed, they adopted policy 117 in November of 22. And subsequent to that, the superintendent and staff developed regulation 117-01 to really outline the expectations for staff relative to matters of race and equity and how we are to respond, and our reporting requirements as well. And that really is the genesis for finding out additional information and getting additional information for our school system about where are we in relation to Policy 117. Where are areas where we're doing okay? Where are areas that we still need to grow? And what are some areas where we need to clarify and sharpen? And so just very, very quickly at a high level, we know that Policy 117 has several different aspects to it, ensuring that all of our students in schools work in a culture and an environment of respect, making sure that our outcomes, whether we're talking about how students are placed in coursework or how they show up in other extracurricular activities, that outcomes are not predictable of actual or perceived race or demographics, that schools and work sites are free of discriminatory, hate, bias, violence, insensitivity, disrespect, and that we're removing any barriers to employment for our staff. Also, some outlines in this policy is to make sure that we're monitoring very clearly our outcomes and results to eliminate discrepancies. As students, encouraging our students to become model citizens, as well as our staff, and then also making sure that the experiences of our students are enriched by staff who are reflective of their backgrounds and experiences. So here's just a brief 3-minute video that really gives an overview of Policy 117 just for those who are new to FCPS and to being introduced to the work. So just want to play this real quick. If it'll play. Here we go.
Let's talk about a new policy adopted by the Frederick County Board of Education. It's Policy 117. This new policy seeks to prevent and eradicate racism in FCPS. It was adopted by the board in November 2022, and it outlines expectations on how our school system reports and responds to acts of racism. It's available to read, like all our policies, at fcps.org. First, here are a few facts about Frederick County Public Schools. Racism in all forms is unacceptable in FCPS. Preventing racism in our schools continues to be the responsibility of every staff member, student, and community member. The board does not tolerate acts of racism by staff, students, volunteers, or attendees at FCPS-sponsored events and activities. We want to make sure we're doing everything we can to prevent racism, bullying, harassment, and intimidation of anyone based on their actual or perceived race, color, culture, or ethnic origin. Basically, the policy affirms the value of respect and inclusivity throughout FCPS. Here are a few key points in Policy 117. The board will frequently engage in action-oriented discussions of race and racial inequities in FCPS, welcoming input from students, staff, families, the community, the Racial Equity Committee, and other community groups. Every school and workplace will promote inclusivity and empower individuals with the knowledge, tools, and resources to stand against and prevent racist acts. Students, parents, teachers, and staff are directly involved in improving their school cultures. We will create action plans for eliminating disproportionalities in representation in programs, access to services, supports, and resources. FCPS provides a pre-kindergarten to grade 12 curriculum that promotes equity, respect, and civility among our diverse community, accurately represents the distinctive contributions of our global community, and provides opportunity for staff and students to model cultural proficiency in every school and program. We will continue to monitor the hiring of teachers and staff with the goal of ensuring that staff demographics mirror student demographics. All FCPS personnel and volunteers receive consistent annual training on preventing and responding to racism. FCPS will enact and continuously improve the means and methods that students, parents, families, teachers, and staff have to report incidents of racism. Every school and workplace should have consistent signage and reporting tools accessible in multiple languages and for people with disabilities. These are the principles for all FCPS staff and students, and the goal of our new policy is to make these things clear and consistent. If you have questions about a policy, you can ask the Board of Education by emailing, calling, or coming to see them. Questions about how policies are actually put into practice at our schools can be directed to school administrators. We are going to continue making sure that Frederick County Public Schools are safe, welcoming places for students and staff.
So very, very strong statements that how our board and our superintendent has made through policy and regulation, and this is just one. And so we are going to go through the climate equity climate survey that was presented to the board on May 15th, and it was conducted by Insight Education Group, a national consulting firm that was selected through a formal bidding process. So just to unpack or go through Insight, a little bit about Insight Education Group. So they bring a wealth of hands-on experience. On their team, they have educators, those who've been in the classroom. They have former superintendents who supported our work as well. And they believe that equity is not an afterthought or an add-on, but it should be ingrained in every single thing that school systems do. Our mission, our vision, as well as our goals as well. And they also believe that lasting change can only be achieved when all stakeholders see themselves as essential contributors to the journey of schooling. The framework that was used for our survey really had 5 different domains that they took a look at as they conducted our work. The first domain, it really deals with central office functions. That's the structures, the systems, and the resources. And they were looking at our planning, our policies and regs. They were looking at our allocation of resources, just some of the things. The second domain you see up there is culture and community. And that domain really focuses on the experiences of staff and students. What supports are in place for our students and for our staff? Who has access to engage? Who's not being engaged in our programming and opportunities? And with our work, does it foster trust with the community? That's the second domain. With the third domain up here, equity in the educator workforce, that really talks about our recruitment, our retention, and our hiring pipeline. How is our staff representative of the community in which we serve? So they took a look at that. The fourth domain up there, professional learning and personal growth, really took a look at how we're developing our school system staff and the people for the staff that's responsible for educating our students. How are we developing our staff and educating our staff around the work of culture and equity? The fifth domain that Insight Education Group took a look at has to deal with curriculum, instruction, and learning. And here's where they dove into our instructional delivery practices and how are we responding to students' needs, whether we need to intervene with them or accelerate their performance. And so these are the 5 domains under which the framework for the Equity Climate Survey was conducted here in FCPS. There's a process that took over a school year, actually started at the end of the school year in 2023, where Insight Education Group staff met with a representative stakeholder group from FCPS, and really what they did was unpack for us what the process was, and then they required a significant amount of data from us. They really took a look at all of our policies and regs, all of our student achievement data. They looked at our perceptual data. They looked at our training that went back for years. They took a look at everything, and as the process continued to unfold, they continued to ask for information and ask questions about, do you have this? Where is this? And so they spent April through May gathering an initial set of data, and then spent some time really combing through that as a first leg of analyzing our work. And that really spanned over the summer. When we got back to the beginning of the 2023-2024 school year, then they deployed a survey, a stakeholder survey. And that survey took a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, and students were surveyed, and we'll show you this later. Students were surveyed, staff was surveyed, community members were surveyed, stakeholder partner organizations in our community were surveyed, so a lot of comprehensive surveying that was done. Phase 3 occurred later in the fall, whereby they began with stakeholder focus groups. And we'll talk about that as well, but the focus groups, they met in small groups of 10 to 20 stakeholder members at a time, and stakeholder groups, again, students, staff, community members, parents, and we'll show you what those stakeholder groups, who those stakeholder groups were. And then, of course, the last phase was them taking all of that information, writing reports, and it says up there November to December. However, that was their initial draft of the report, but then they always came back to us, asked for clarifying information, received more documentation, so it actually spanned a little bit longer than that. But this was just the process that unfolded throughout the survey. As I shared information on the timeline that was done through the survey, I wanted to highlight when we talk about stakeholders here, again, we're referring to secondary students, and so our secondary students were involved. Our staff, our school, our district leaders, families, and caregivers, as well as other community members and organizations in some cases. Insight Education Group led and conducted and facilitated all of the surveys. We provided the data to them, but we had no entanglement or involvement in the data. And the focus groups, they solely conducted the focus groups as well, without staff involvement or engagement unless we were part of the focus groups ourselves. And so this was totally run independent of FCPS staff engagement and involvement. When we think about the surveys, there were 16,000, close to 600 respondents to the survey, which is significant for a school system of our size. Really want to highlight from Insight Education Group, they were very, very surprised at the level of engagement with our secondary students. What they have indicated is that for a school district our size, usually they may get a couple of thousand. They've never seen this significant engagement from our secondary students. And they have conducted equity audits or equity climate surveys all over the United States, and a lot of districts larger than us, as well as similarly sized districts as well. And so with the focus groups, the process that they used was we collaborated on a schedule with them. We had to facilitate locations for them, where they could meet. We had to open the door for them, all of those things. But no, that's the survey. We basically sent it out for them. They generated the surveys, they created the forms. We shared it with all of our staff and everything. And then those who participated in the surveys also had an opportunity to express interest in focus groups. And so focus groups were created as a result of the surveys. Focus groups were hosted by Insight Education Group. They usually took about 45 minutes to 60 minutes long, and I know the Racial Equity Committee, some of you participated in a focus group as well. The focus groups were limited to 10 to 12, and if more than 12 people RSVP'd, additional focus groups were created to accommodate the requests. We conducted 53 focus groups, and from Insight Education Group, for a district our size, again, they saw this as a significant number of focus groups. Reason being is because we advocated for and wanted to make sure that we have focus group representation from all aspects of our school system, all of our communities, every single feeder pattern, and we advocated to make sure that we had representation from students from all of our feeders, parents from all of our feeders. We wanted to make sure the Racial Equity Committee was represented, as well as some of our community organizing group partners. And so 53 was a total. So that was a lot of information that was received through focus groups and through our survey responses. As we go through the next slides, we're going to unpack what the findings were for each of the domains, and we're going to present those in general themes as well as recommendations from Insight Education Group, and then what has been some of our response as a result to some of that. What you will find is that some of the work from the recommendations and the themes that they pointed out have already been started in FCPS, and then there's some work that we know we still have to do. And so the work is ongoing. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Artis to sort of start unpacking some of these results.
All right, so with this, the Insight Education Group, the presentation they did for the board back in May, they emphasized several things. The presentation you are about to see talks about the what were the findings, what were the assets, the themes, and recommendations of Insight Education Group. We're not going to get that much into the why. We'll give you some updates. The implementation plan will also give you the how. But today's presentation really is just focusing on the what of what was found during the presentation. And as Dr. Harris said, we will give you some tidbits about what we've done in the meantime since this survey even was conducted and even since the presentation happened in May. So this report has a substantial amount of data and information. The full report is online as well, but we're just going to give you a high level of what they found today. So starting off domain 1, so as you can see it involves structures, systems, and resources, and Dr. Harris already kind of went through what that included. And as you see in the upper left corner there, every slide that you'll see for each domain is structured in the same way. The upper left-hand corner does talk about our assets. The right-hand corner, as you can see, talks about the overall themes and findings of the report. And the bottom part of the domain on the slide will give you the recommendations. So for domain, it concentrates on the functions of the front office and the central office. Noted assets in FCPS were the strategic plan and the execution of having a strategic plan and actually putting it into action in the school system. We have an actual educational equity definition, and that was highlighted as in policy 444, and we consistently use that throughout the system. And that's something that they mentioned is unique in a school system, to have a common definition that we recurringly go to and that we kind of base our work on. Also, this group right here was seen as a huge asset, and so they noted that even having a racial equity committee to lens practices, procedures, and the community was a huge asset of FCPS and how we do the work of equity. On the right, under overall themes, our surveys and focus groups revealed varied attitudes towards equity among stakeholders. While many expressed optimism and support for the ongoing discussions and initiatives, they also noted significant reservations and misunderstandings regarding the concept of equity. And so, again, going back to how do we educate our community and our stakeholders about equity and what equity really means. So as far as the recommendations from Insight Education Group,
as you can see there. Regarding the challenges, so during the focus group, stakeholders expressed frustration concerning the implementation of policies related to equity, particularly around the timelines. So they noted that many people in the focus groups talked about what they felt was a lag between the implementation of a policy and the regulation, and maybe the subsequent training that went along with that. So that was a big part of that. For Domain 1, as regarding the progress that we have made since this presentation was made, we have conducted and we have fully implemented Policy 117. We have also fully implemented Regulation 117.01 as well. In FCPS, we have also established an internal communication for all school-based equity reps, and that was one of the recommendations they made. So in our school system today, all of our equity reps have a means in which they can communicate with us as an equity team, but also directly with one another as equity reps, just trying to increase the transparency for each other and also the means of communication just to keep it open. Since this study has gone into place, we have not only implemented a student code of conduct, but even this year we were able to make some updates and make some revisions based on some equity feedback that we've received over the past year. And likewise, we've also this year enhanced our student reporting. So part of the recommendations here were to increase transparency and communication. So as Dr. Harris mentioned earlier, we have implemented basically 3 reporting means this school year, the newest being the hate bias reporting. On August 19th, all of our schools went through the process and what that means and how to report incidents. And that form is now publicly available to all of our stakeholders. So students, staff, and parents can all basically get on the hate bias form and report incidents of hate throughout the school system that they've experienced or they've witnessed. For Domain 2, as you can see, our assets there. 2 is where we hone in on experiences of students, staff, and the community. And Insight Education Group discussed that they received a wealth of information and they spent quite a bit of time on Domain 2. They noted that of the 5 domains, this is probably the area where they spent a great amount of time because they received such a huge amount of information in return for that. As far as our assets, they felt that catering to our diverse population, and they especially noted that our rural and suburban and urban communities across the county being acknowledged by the diversity and our equity initiatives, and the district recognizing the importance of the work in each feeder pattern was very marveled by them. They just had not seen that before. During the process, there was evidence our request for Insight Education Group to make logistical changes to the focus groups. I think Dr. Harris mentioned that earlier, for additional sessions. And I can't recall the exact number, but when we initially talked to them, they said, we're going to have 2 student focus groups. And then we just said, wait a minute, that's not enough. And so we went back to them and we said, we have a very unique culture in FCPS, and you at least have to do 1 per feeder pattern. And so they did go back and they added additional, especially student focus groups, ensuring that all of our feeder patterns and all of our diverse stakeholders, especially our students, were heard. For student engagement, they noted that, and there are a number of initiatives and programs designed with specific purpose of encouraging our student engagement. And they noted our Student Voices program. They also noted our Student Council Association, which the student councils from each of the middle school and high schools come together, and they have a multiple collaborative meetings to have their voices elevated throughout the county. They mentioned the Changemakers Summit as well, which our students get together and they have discussions about making their school a better and more inclusive place. So those 3 opportunities were mentioned, but we also, of course, since then have had SOCA, and we've talked about SOCA and the opportunity for student engagement as well. For parent engagement, the overall themes and findings, there's a variety of perspectives in the effectiveness of parental engagement throughout the district. Based on the survey, over 90% of parent and caregiver respondents shared that they felt comfortable talking to the teachers and administration of their school for their child. However, focus groups responded with varied experiences. For example, I wrote some of these down. When asked if they felt like they had a voice in the district, the responses were varied. Many families new to the district shared that challenges they face in navigating the district and getting to know FCPS as a school system and as a culture. Parents in the northern part of our county also shared feelings of exclusion from the rest of the district. Families and staff suggested that we investigate the experiences of families who live within the larger FCPS community and communicate more on a regular basis with the families throughout the county. In addition to developing a student code of conduct, we have strategically focused on the multi-tiered system of support, which you may hear called the MTSS. In recent years, we have provided academic support, and during this process, they noted that we were also working on behavioral supports as well. So that was not completed by the end of the survey, but they did at least mention the behavioral supports. And the following actions and progress have been made toward Domain 2. So we have enhanced data collection and monitoring for hate bias, bullying, and intimidation. You just saw the video for Policy 117. So our office did work with the Public Affairs Office to create that video. That video will soon be publicly accessible for everyone to be able to see. We have also increased our student-led programs throughout the county, and Dr. Harris already mentioned some of them, including No Place for Hate, Student Voices, Changemaker, and there's other things that we're working on. And those are systemic initiatives, but they also noted, and we're continuing to work on school-based student-led programs. We have quite a bit of them throughout the system. And our office has also continued to support the Teacher Academy at the Career and Technology Center, in which we're encouraging students, grow your own for our students in FCPS to become educators. In Domain 3, the focus is on recruitment and retention and promotion of staff. So the study's data collection initially revealed trends necessitating a recruitment and retention plan. But again, Dr. Harris went over the timeline. As they were doing the study, we actually came out with a publicly accessible hiring report. And so we'll note that in a second as well, but that was something that transpired during this study phase. The FCPS tiered staffing model is structured to promote equitable staffing practices across the district, and that was also noted as an asset of FCPS. In the findings and themes, currently FCPS lacks an educator workforce that accurately reflects the demographic composition of its student population, and that was noted. And there are there continues to be recruitment and retention challenges with that. But of course, that is one of our primary goals when it comes to recruitment and retention in FCPS. And so below you'll see the recommendations to enhance our diversity and inclusivity in recruitment and retention, strengthen our staff retention and advancement strategies, and enhance transparency and accountability for these diversity initiatives, because some noted that they weren't quite sure what was happening in FCPS. It's like, what is FCPS doing about recruitment? So making that more transparent. Some of the things we've done since this report has come out, we have facilitated an MSDE course called Equity and with Excellence course. It's offered to FCPS teachers, but it's also offered throughout the state. And FCPS staff are the facilitators and teachers for that course. We have also facilitated a series of equity professional learning sessions for our Human Resources Department. We partnered with them for over a year to offer PL with the entire Human Resources staff to offer them support as they are transitioning to implement more equity-focused recruitment and retention initiatives. And we've also enhanced the employee concern resolution process, and you may have seen that. It's on the website. It is publicly accessible now. So the forms are all there. There's a nice graphic that just kind of walks you through the process of what to expect, including an informal process, but you can also go through the process of actually filing the paperwork to have a formal process made. So
just to highlight the professional learning with Human Resources, again, we spent over a year, and we continue to partner with them and work with them on hiring and recruitment efforts, but it included everything from looking at subtle acts of exclusion or microaggressions in our hiring processes. It took a look at different biases that we showed up. And one of the things we also did with them is looked at hundreds of interview questions for subtle bias that might be laid within them. And as a matter of fact, this morning we shared with representative principals from all over our school system, some of the work that resulted as a result of our partnership with Human Resources with looking at how do you have hiring practices and interviewing practices that mitigate against bias, implicitly or explicitly, and that would promote and invite diverse candidates to come to Frederick County Public Schools. So a lot of work that went into that, and that work will continue.
For Domain 4 examines staff development through an equity lens. The assets highlighted included leadership commitment to equity, the district's professional learning calendar, the fact that we have it laid out very clearly and very succinctly for our leaders to be able to see was an asset, which includes a specific track focused on equity. And as you may have heard, equity-driven, evidence-informed, and so the fact that we were equity-driven in all of our professional learning, they were excited about that.
They were able to go back 7 years of consistent professional learning and training on the work of equity and cultural proficiency, and so they really highlighted that as an asset for us.
So while many leaders and staff appreciate the emphasis, they also pointed out the challenges of that, like constraints in managing multiple initiatives simultaneously. Another key aspect was time. Time was, of course, a challenge. Another key aspect that they recognize, I'm sorry, jump back here, for the assets were the 70 equity representatives that we have in FCPS. So they highlighted the fact that we do have at least one point person in each school building that receives training, and that is the point person for equity initiatives in their school building, and who also help facilitate the professional learning for equity as well. The recommendations for this domain include enhancing communication about existing equity efforts, also boosting the session reach for equity representatives and their administrators. And the last recommendation is about getting more eyes on the professional learning calendars and the offerings. This includes using the Racial Equity Committee as a resource to do that, and so kind of going over that with you all as well. As far as the actions and progress made towards that, we have increased our professional learning and support for our school-based equity representatives. Dr. Harris mentioned it earlier, but I think last year we only had 2 sessions for our equity reps. This year we have 4 sessions that are planned. The first session was at the beginning of August. Before the beginning of the school year even started, there was an opportunity that we had for our equity reps to receive the training for the first module, to come in and get support, to kind of walk through, to experience the module, but also to ask questions and to get some further insight into that. We also offer consultation. Over the past year, we've had experts that have come in and give support to our equity reps that have done the evidence-informed research and been able to support them. Secondly, created required professional learning for all staff and volunteers. So Dr. Harris just mentioned we have worked with Human Resources quite a bit. We've also worked with a number of other entities in FCPS, food and nutrition services, and I can have a bunch of them, I can't right now, but there are a number of other organizations, BSG, if that's still their title, BSG I think it is, but many, many other organizations in FCPS, so they have gone through the work of doing equity throughout the year. We facilitated PL at new hire symposiums and worked with our new hires as well. So as they're being introduced to FCPS, they understand that equity is the FCPS way. So from the first time that they get here in FCPS, we've implemented that. Lastly, when it comes to curriculum and instruction and learning, the study highlights the assets. The district's recognition of diversity, that is actually a huge deal. The fact that our district is not afraid, and we welcome the discussion with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Evidence showed targeted efforts to meet varying student needs across feeder patterns. It's crucial to acknowledge that parental concerns about inconsistencies in academic offerings across schools. This includes the availability and access to the IB program and other courses that you all have noted here with the Racial Equity Committee. On the themes and findings side, the disparities exist sometimes. They exist in the proficiency rates among different student groups. That's still noted. As mentioned earlier, one of the systems that is in progress throughout our system is data analysis. So we have out in our schools, but we also have a larger systemic data analysis team that does and that's continuing to work with data analysis. The recommendations for this domain include supporting teachers with the use of the district's guiding questions for the equity questions in their classroom practices. And as Dr. Harris mentioned, that training will be happening later this month in order to make decisions on a more equitable basis. And the actions that we have made towards this goal, we have created and facilitated professional learning on the impact statements and guiding questions. We have done that for all of our school improvement teams throughout the entire county. So all of our school improvement teams have gone through that training. How do we apply an equity lens? Here's how you apply equity-driven impact statements and questions. We've also gone through that training with a number of our administrators, assistant principals, and principals as well. We participated in textbook and curricular material review process. So right now in that process, there is always an equity-minded or equity-focused person that is on the committee or on the group that's reviewing our curriculum resources as well as our textbooks. And we supported the drafting of the required cultural heritage and holiday announcements. And so as you were hearing the announcements in your school, we do collaborate with CII and departments as such to make sure that those announcements are in a culturally proficient way. So, and I just said this earlier, but of course today's presentation, this is very high level. What the report is, if you've seen, it's a very long document. It's very thorough. The actual data is also included in the full report. So this is just the what. So again, what were the assets? What were the findings? What are the recommendations? What have we done to make progress towards it? And if you're looking to see more of the context, the full report does have that. And as we continue on, we are implementing more and more of the recommendations throughout the year. So like Insight Education Group has stated, typically their districts take about 3 to 5 years to implement this, and we see that being a reasonable timeline for FCPS as well. However, they did note that although these are recommendations, it doesn't state that we have not done these things. It just means that at the time of the survey or at the time of the study, they were not maybe implemented or fully implemented, or they want to make sure we continue doing the practices that they recognize. And so just wanted to make that point there. Anything else? All right. So, and I just said that, I'm sorry. So some of these may be new ideas, and these are things that were in progress. So code of conduct, when they started, was just starting out, but that's fully implemented now. The hiring plan was in its drafting form when the survey was done, but that's fully implemented now. And data analysis practices are now ingrained in the work that we do throughout the county. So these are just 3 examples of things that were kind of started when they started the survey, but now are fully implemented in FCPS. And our monitoring tools are existing throughout. All right. That's a lot. Any questions? So, any questions? Any feedback? Questions?
So I appreciated the comprehensiveness and the process that they engage, and more so the engagement of our students as well as our staff and community as they've come out. And, you know, as you saw, they highlighted some things that they found, the best practice that are implemented. But then also, as you listen to it, we leaned into what are those areas where we know we still have to do some focused work in. And so we've been leaning into that, and we'll continue to lean into some of that focused work that we know that we need to continue to do. We serve a very diverse community in Frederick County, you know, largest land mass, and so you can have, you know, rural areas one minute and then urban or suburban areas another minute, and each feeder area or area of Frederick County have their uniquenesses, which makes it a challenge in implementing things, developing things, because there's not one method or approach that fits every single community. And so we have to make sure that we're diversifying our efforts and our work to be responsive of all of our student needs. So the work continues.
I have a question. What the rate? You knew I was coming. My first question would be, did they indicate where the more problematic areas were within the county, or what the most compelling work that we need to focus on would be? So we had to prioritize of the 5 domains, what would be the one that would need the most attention immediately? I have a thought, but I just want to know what you thought.
So they definitely highlighted the achievement gaps, as something that we need to continue to address. And that's ongoing work that we need to do. They mentioned that we have valuable resources, supports, and structures in place, but we may not be utilizing them to the greatest extent. So for example, we have equity representatives in all of our schools, and they felt as though that they were underutilized. So we need to utilize them more as resources to support our administrators in delivering professional learning, and not only being resources for our staff, but then also using them as a way to inform some of the stuff that we are doing in FCPS. So they really wanted us to pour more into our equity reps in our schools, professional learning and just building them up. So that's another area as well.
I think for me, something that just raised to the top is people are not aware of what we are doing.
Yeah.
So whether it be communication and or transparency, but they said, well, I don't think people are aware of what you do or what the equity work is. And so I would say the communication of what is happening in FCPS regarding equity, we're working that through as well to increase the communication of what's actually happening, because that was noted a few times. It's like people are not aware of there being an equity rep, or people aren't aware of the models, or people aren't aware of certain things. And so I would say that's one of the things for me that really stuck out that they recommended oftentimes is improving communication.
I know you all said that you were working with Human Resources for the last year in order to kind of beef up that work. So I guess my question would be, what have they done, let's say in the last hiring cycle, that is different than 3 hiring cycles ago?
So some more blind interviewing types of processes, whereby you try to remove factors of name and demographics and just look at products that are presented from candidates. They have moved away from relying so much on the interview question itself as the basis for the hiring method, and have developed more comprehensive hiring processes, such as more situational types of things, and you've been involved with some of those hiring processes, so you can describe it a little bit better, some of those changes.
Yeah, so the interview process in general has changed. It's no longer necessarily where you, as the interviewee, come in and you're sitting across the table from multiple people. It's a rotational thing, and it's really based on the different behavioral questions or situational things and demonstrations. And so I would say if it's compared to 3 years ago, that was not in place 3 years ago. So in addition from the blind application to the actual interview process, that has evolved quite a bit in how that interview happens.
There are also more
behavioral.
stakeholders involved in interviewing processes, and so like for an administrator's example, there's not just one team that you will interview with. There are multiple teams to get much greater stakeholder and diverse perspectives on a candidate.
So I feel like that conversation is coming from like a central office perspective, in the sense that when someone comes in and they apply to Frederick County Public Schools, this is what we do. So now they're in the candidate pool, right? That what you're explaining does not translate into the school. So that's why I'm
I
like,
just want to say,
Yeah.
I was on the interviewing staff with Frederick County for many years. Last year was the first year that I didn't do it. And what I saw was we had a real diverse number of people interviewing initially. I see it as the disconnect comes when they're actually in front of somebody. They interview great the first time, and then they go into the schools. And I say for the same thing for administration. So my follow-up question is, did you see a difference this year with your changing of the questions or the interview process, the blind? Did we hire more people of color? Did we hire more males versus, because what we normally get is white female. I know there are fewer people of color even training to be teachers. We know that that's an issue. But did you see a difference this year?
So, I don't have it for this year, and I know that there's a report that will come out later on this year. And again, some of the work that we did with human resources last year, some of that work is just now starting to unfold. And so this morning, as a matter of fact, we met with administrators to talk to them for any area or category that you're interviewing, whether it's teachers, whether it's custodians, whether it's instructional assistants. Here are processes to use. Here are questions that you're able to use, because all of these processes, all of these questions have been vetted to ensure that it has peeled away bias to the greatest extent. And so a lot of the results of the work that's been done with human resources are now starting to come out and emerge for school staff. And so it's hard to measure as a result of the work that we did last year, because then the planning phase started happening.
Can I say two things to that too? I think when it comes to our work with human resources, as Dr. Harris said, the work is ongoing. So although we've worked with them for a year and a half, like, there is still much work to be done. So we are fully acknowledging of that. There is still much work to be done. And part of the equity training, as we'll call it, the cultural proficiency training, it's the inside out approach. You may have heard that term before. So some of that work, beginning with human resources, was not necessarily about those functional operational things. It was really stopping to take some time to work with the HR team to do the inside work first. So it's an ongoing process, and so we fully acknowledge there is a long way to go. As we said, our goal is really for our teacher and our professional staff to mirror our students' demographics, and we are not even close to that. So we have a long way to go. So this is not presented in a way like we've done it, we've worked with HR, this is in no way, shape, or form saying that at all. We acknowledge we have a long way to go. The work with human resources and other departments, we will continue to work with that department. But I just wanted to mention the beginning part, a good part of that work was the inside work, and just having people be reflective about their practices, their biases, about how this may show up when you're asking someone a question, how you respond to them. So that's a good part of the work, and then we still have a good chunk of things to do when it becomes operational.
I think that what I would like to see, and it's a fine line, a push to get more representation, not just in teachers, custodians, and SEIAs, but in administration as well. I think and you've acknowledged it's very unbalanced. And after a school that is very diverse, and you have that many people of color in your building, that says something to our students. And so, for me, that's just a big thing.
Has recruiting changed at all?
I did want to mention that. I think there's just a couple other points to be aware of. I mean, the first point is that if we look at data, this year's going to be an anomaly because of the budget challenges we had and what was an overall reduction in the number of teachers in our schools. So we didn't hire as many people. But the second thing that's important to note is that the fact of the matter is we know we're in a shortage across the country, particularly among the teaching workforce, and we are in competition with other districts in the region. I think it's safe to say, and we have data to back it up, that we are looked at as an optimal place to transfer to from another district. People want to come here from other places. And so we have backed up our timelines so that instead of offering positions in April, May, and June, we're backing it up earlier in the year because we've gotten feedback over time that people are waiting to hear from FCPS. I got an offer from another district, so we push back our timelines so that we can be in competition with those other districts, be the first to offer positions, and be really strategically recruiting diverse candidates who are coming with experience. We're not just talking about the 22-year-olds who are graduating college, we're also talking about people we are actively recruiting with experience. So there are some structural things like that, just with sheer timelines and processes. In my department, there's been a history of screening applicants, which just adds another step and slows things down. So we've kind of eliminated that. So qualified candidates can be in a fast track to a candidate pool. Those kinds of things structurally we think are really going to help. Although in the short term we may not see it in raw data because of the different numbers of teachers we're hiring each year.
Sort of taking some notes here.
I had wanted to ask, so those equity representatives, are those also a resource for families or the children? Like, I'm not familiar with that role and have never heard about it, and how do I find out who ours is? Like,
Yeah.
that's something that's going to be communicated out to, like, here's who your equity rep is?
Primarily, they're just a support to staff and
Okay.
to the administrator. So the administrator will still be the primary point of contact, and then that administrator will pull in additional folks as needed to support families.
Can I also?
Yeah.
Since Michelle left, and we're the only two. So, it's also dependent on each school. Each administrator is using the equity rep in a different way. And what I love as an equity rep is that we're trying to streamline that so that it's more consistent against, so it just depends. I know in my school I'm much more used now for consulting on issues, and that's why the extra training that we're getting, like, I just happen to have this. But it's putting a lot more sort of responsibility in the hands of the equity rep to be spokespersons for our equity office, who is small, and there's a lot to be done. So, yeah. So I think it also depends on your school and your administrators and probably the equity rep to a certain extent.
I will add from this point of view, I would say that there are two gaps that we have to focus on. One is awareness. If I'm aware, I can also educate someone. So if we could pull ourselves towards awareness and also educate the children who are victims, it will go a long way for them to even know where to go when they have issues or they are faced with those challenges.
My thought is, with the Human Resource Office, I know in the many years that I was in the county, it was not very diverse even in human resources. Is that changed? Has that changed over the years? In the office being more diverse?
I'm not sure what the statistics were when you were there. I previously worked in human resources. So I used to work in human resources. There are several, as far as racial diversity, there are a few people of color in human resources. Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4. So that's more when I was in the office, but I'm not sure what you're comparing it to. So I'll say that, okay?
Because to me, that would be, if you're looking to interview and hire teachers that are more diverse, it makes it a lot easier to when you have more diversity in your HR department of your school system.
Yeah, I mean, as far as representation, I mean, there are 2 primary recruiters right now. We do have 2, and I know one person is a person of color. So, yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
I just want to highlight the video that we saw regarding policy 117, and I know you mentioned that right now it's not available publicly. Will that be something that will be highlighted for the public to see? We got a first view, which I think was fabulous, and it brought together a lot of the work that was done for racial equity for those that have been here for a while to understand and see, and also to know the work that the equity office has done. So thank you for that. But I was wondering, timeline, if you have a timeline, will that be available?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing right now is doing some upgrades to the FCPS website. We want to structure it in such a way that makes it even clearer to our community about the various methods of reporting, about some of the work that we're doing. The video might go over there as well. So we just want to make it as easy as possible. So that work is happening right now.
Thank you. That was great. play the video.
And it was mentioned, a few minutes ago about, the need for our equity reps because of the small equity office. A lot of the work that you see, hear, and have heard about over the past few years is done by our equity office of a director and 2 teacher specialists. Only to highlight
I mean, they're awesome.
incredible amounts of work and the quality of work of our equity team led by Dr. Artis.
It's an uphill battle, but you guys are awesome. And also, even for the video, just in full disclosure too, so one of the things that our equity reps, but our teacher specialist is what closed captioned it. So we got the video done, and so that's one of the things the specialist has taken the time, like a couple of days to do when we finally got the video, was to close caption it, because we want to make sure we're being fully inclusive. So those are just some of the behind the scenes things that may add a little bit of delay or what people think the timeline is, but we are committed to producing operational excellence, and when it reaches the public, we want to make sure it's the highest quality of material and resources. So,
Are you going to have it in Spanish?
we are hoping to have it in Spanish, and so that's one of the other delays. So, yes. And then when we have it in Spanish, we'll have to have closed captioning in Spanish, and so that's part of
That'll work.
so that's part of the process that we have to kind of go through with our small team.
We've I've heard from some members in the community about some of the challenges and struggles that they have with our training materials, particularly for volunteers. Are the written, you can translate to Spanish, but not the videos. Or Spanish is the only available language, and there's several other languages. So when you can click, if you do a newsletter, you can click to get your language of choice, but not so much. So I've been in conversation with public affairs about that. Didn't really get a definitive answer. Then it was another piece of feedback that we received.
It was me.
Yes, I remember that. No, I remember that. There was one other that I received, and it just escaped my mind. But it's about accessibility to materials. So translating things, again, like if it's written, you can click a button and pick a language. But when there's a video.
And if I could follow up on that, because you forwarded their response where they said, this is how it's supposed to work. But what I can tell you is that's not how it is working. So I'm actually a training developer by trade, like that's what I do. I develop that kind of training. And when you click the drop down for English and Spanish, it's not, because they said if you click it, then it'll give you the other options. Well, I translated it to Spanish. I looked for everything, and it's not like or if it's there, it's not user friendly, and you can't figure out how to do it. So like I've been trying to help my school. They're trying to train their volunteers to find out how to do that, because I'm at a school with a large Spanish-speaking population. And that's, like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have to bring someone in to translate it. So that's something that, and just like that, like, I'm not sure it's closed caption. I think those might be open captions. So if you're not familiar with the difference, open captions are burned in, as opposed to closed captions that you dynamically change them. So that was one of the things, like it, yeah.
Yeah.
She was staff, girl.
I do know that
testing and all that, like I do that for a living. So
I had a conversation with public affairs just last week about this. And so they are aware, and they are starting to work to address it. Yeah.
And I know that public affairs, I traveled with a public affairs representative across the county, communicating with administrators over the summer, and it was offered that they can come in and help with if they have an on-site volunteer opportunity, that there will be translators there will be people there to help them with the forms and with things. So they understand that there are some barriers and some concerns, and they're trying to find ways to address that.
I did appreciate that there was a test this year, because that's, last year there wasn't, and that's, okay, we gotta make sure you actually went through the material. So I did appreciate, and that does translate, so.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. We have just a reminder of our meeting dates. So our next meeting is October 1st, November 13th. Please make sure this is on your calendar, because when we have issues that we need to vote on, we have to make sure that we have quorum in order to do so. January 15th, February the 5th, March 5th, and May 14th. We're working on the community forum, which will be in April. There is a date up, but we might have to switch the date. So it looks like it's gonna end up being around April the 10th. So we do not have a December meeting, and we do not have an April meeting, but we have an April forum. So I will be sending out some emails regarding opportunities for you all, for us to start our work with our subcommittees. Ouch.
Are we gonna be on the same subcommittees we were assigned to last year?
Well, our work is shifting a little bit.
Yeah.
So the SOCA piece is huge. Like, we're probably gonna have 2 separate committees come together. We're gonna work with the equity office. We really need to work on the visibility of SOCA and making sure that the students have the opportunity to advocate and just get together. So we did a first round of training for our new leaders of SOCA. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. They are so excited. They've been very busy. They are blowing me up every day. So I think in Middletown, they're actually starting a SOCA club. Yes, girl.
Really?
Come on now.
Right? That is awesome.
That is amazing, right? So the young folks have been reaching out to me. We're trying to look at a culminating activity for them. There's a lot of planning, so I'm gonna be probably taking a field trip to Dr. Harris's office, just telling him now, to Dr. Harris's office to try to see if we can scale this and connect it with the Change Maker Summit, things that are already happening through the equity office. Because the other issue is when I take my field trip to Ray Gallagher's house, they're talking about some money. I am not ashamed. I will ask. So just kind of working and navigating through that. I have become extremely swamped at work. So I need to kind of carve out time every morning and do my rec stuff, but I'm inundated right now with everything that's going on for me in the beginning of the year, with setting up clubs, and I have 10 new 504s going on. Like, there's a lot going on in my world. So if I have not been in communication, it's not because I'm not thinking about you all, but I think that's why it's important for us to start really, spreading the work and spreading the wealth, so that at the end of this year, we can say we did some amazing things and start thinking about opportunities for leadership for this committee, because this is my last year. They're gonna put me out at the end of the year because this is my 4th year. So I want you guys to start thinking about that as well. Because we have some dynamic people on the committee that can keep this work going. And that is very important to me, that this work continues, and we are probably the strongest we've ever been. The last announcement for me is that we will be presenting 26th. We're presenting our annual report to the Board of Education. I believe it's the 26th of September. I don't have my calendar in front of me. But, so if you're able to attend that would be wonderful. If not, you can always view it, but I'd love to have committee members here at that time.
I think you could send out an email or something.
Oh, of course I will. I promise you that. Yeah, because that is coming up by the end of the month, so.
Wednesday, the 25th.
Wednesday, 25th, thank you. I know it's coming. So at this time, if we don't have any other questions, comments, or concern, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:30. Give you 30 minutes to commiserate amongst yourselves if you'd like. And if not, I will see everybody in person October 1st, and be looking out for emails because I will be sending them. All right?